You're listening to the Monday Night Community Show with Daniel on BRFM.
This is the Daniel Monday Night Community Show on demand through YouTube. Thank you very much for choosing to listen to us through this method. If you'd like to keep up to date with when I add new interviews, then subscribe to this channel.
We present Tears of the Devil by John Fryer with Nigel Peaver, Richard Graylin, Jeff Bainham and Robin Ingram as the banker. The play is set in a fictional White House in the early years of the 21st century. Episode 2.
We gave you more than you ever provided to us.
Syrian businessmen, some with very high-level government connections, were supplying arms and weapons into Iraq right up to our invasion, to be used against U.S. forces. And some say that Syria was the final resting place of Iraq's WMD. That's we never found.
President Bashar denies any involvement in those transactions.
But not knowledge. But then how could he? As we supplied the satellite images for him to see, showing the very cars and trucks taking the armament all the way to Damascus.
You may recall, we asked for a back channel so that our two nations may speak quietly but openly to each other. It was the American government that said no.
President Bashar chose, and he chose wrong.
You do not understand the position he is in.
We understand that he is a shadow of his father.
Mr. Sterling, whatever my personal feelings for my president, I ask that you speak with respect of him, as I have always tried to speak with respect of yours.
What would you have told us via a back channel?
Information obtained through our intelligence directorate concerning the operational status of a group calling itself the Answar.
I'm listening.
We know they have centres in several European countries, most notably population areas of Bonn, Frankfurt and Milan.
We'll check that out with our own people.
The funding for their operation is channeled indirectly from the Muslim Alliance. The alliance is, of course, based in Saudi Arabia.
Due to your country's support for the likes of Hezbollah, Hamas, and Islamic Jihad, I hardly feel you are in a position to judge who we make our ally.
You knew that the kingdom was supplying the finance, and yet it is us who are in your sights. My question, the question of my president, is why? This is not, I think, simply about oil.
It's about a lot of things, Mr. Ambassador. Oil is just one of them.
Then perhaps you could explain.
You did not help us, when you could have with Turkey.
Are you aiming at Syria because you still hold a grudge against us?
We needed Turkish air bases from which to attack Saddam Hussein. You could have interceded on our behalf.
Against a Muslim brother?
Your religion is the basis of everything you do?
No, Mr. Sterling. You do not understand us at all. Or perhaps you only pretend not to understand us.
The Arab world hates freedom. And that's what we brought to Iraq. And that's why you wouldn't support us.
Please, Mr. Sterling, don't pretend that you believe any of your own rhetoric. Those accusations may be acceptable for your television stations, but I know the thinking in the White House corridors is somewhat different.
Did Turkey allow us to use that territory, yes or no?
And why did they say no?
Because we represent freedom and democracy.
Because you support Israel. And Israel supports the Kurds.
Israel has denied on several occasions any involvement in the north of Iraq.
But we both know that the Mossad operates there. And so does Ankara. And so does Tehran.
The Middle East is a complicated situation, I will admit that.
Then concede this point also. The long dream of Kurdistan would eat into land, not only in modern-day Iraq, but also Syria, Iran, and Turkey. With the large mineral and oil deposits in that region acting as the financial backbone of such a nation-state, why would any of those countries support the creation of such an entity whose existence would threaten their very survival? And that logic, Mr. Sterling, has nothing whatsoever to do with religious belief.
Then we are simply left with logic, Mr. Ambassador, and possibly conflict.
You threaten to leave my country in turmoil.
No, Mr. Ambassador, I do not.
You will destroy my country's government and leave chaos on the streets.
Nothing could be further from the truth, sir. A replacement administration has already been assembled in private and will take over the positions of those current ministers we wish to interview. Your citizens will not even notice the changing.
My president would need an excellent excuse to remove those men from power.
Then let me give you. Arrange for those men to be handed over to us, and we'll call off the invasion of your country.
We have no army, no air force, and no navy. And yet I can pick up any telephone and make the leaders of the world dance to our tune. Syria will fall. The last bastion of communist influence in the Middle East will crumble, followed by the end of every dictatorship throughout the region. Democracy will flourish, and that is all well and good. But we will not waste this opportunity. We shall fund every political party the Arabs choose to put together. Left or right, moderate or extreme, they shall all learn the price of doing business in the capitalist world. That is a price that shall be high, and paid and repaid from one generation to the next.
A final deadline has now been set by the United Nations Security Council for the handing over of the Syrian terrorists responsible for the attack on the British oil tanker Ocean Spirit. However, if no movement is forthcoming from the Syrian government by midnight tonight, then insiders of the Pentagon are said to already be planning a series of prepared military options for the consideration of the president. But under the current political regime in Damascus and the hardline elements that make up the Syrian government, a compromise does not seem overly likely at this time.
Mr. President, we can now confirm the deployment of the Russian fleet.
The whole fleet?
Considerably more than was believed they could muster, sir.
Save one or two support ships, which will no doubt leave port soon. Yes, Mr. President.
A total of 75 vessels in all. This is not, and I repeat, not a naval exercise. They are definitely moving out to meet our ships in the Gulf.
What about our 3rd and 6th fleets?
They'll arrive just before the Soviet craft, Mr. President.
What are the Russians saying about this?
The Russian ambassador has just met with officials from the State Department and declared that they will not allow Syria to join Iraq on our list of defeated countries.
What's wrong with Grudesny? Doesn't he know this is about terrorist suspects and not world conquest?
The hardliners in the Duma currently have the ear of the Russian president, and he's listening.
Mr. President, unless we demonstrate to the world that we are prepared to go after all international terrorists wherever they seek sanctuary, we will have opened ourselves up to attack after attack after attack. We have no choice, sir. We must see this through.
How long before the Russian ships will be in a position to threaten our vessels?
If they maintain their current rate of knots, sir, 5 days.
We will continue our military buildup as they continue theirs. Hope the Kremlin sees sense in time.
And if they don't?
Mr. President, you have the authorization of the UN.
I think this country has long since destroyed the credibility of the United Nations. And what good will legal authorization do us if we leave carnage in its wake?
It's the world we live in, Mr. President, and there's nothing any of us can do about it.
As the deadline passed last night, a nervous stock market began trading down huge losses on the Dow Jones here in New York. With fear of military action growing ever nearer on both sides of the Atlantic, high-level meetings are said to be taking place within the Security Council at this very moment.
They've set to sea.
Yes?
Then they're serious.
You thought they weren't?
The collective thinking was that the Russians wouldn't honor their side of the deal with Syria.
That was the collective thinking.
And doesn't that now appear to be somewhat bad planning?
Why?
David, during the 40 years of the Cold War, we never had to go head-to-head with Moscow. But now that the threat of nuclear obliteration is over, that is exactly where we are heading.
Ironic, isn't it?
The only income that Russia has is its Siberian oil and gas reserves. If we continue to threaten overproduction, President Grozny will have no choice but to join the side of Damascus.
We'll see.
We are forcing his hand.
If they fight.
The thinking was they wouldn't even put to sea.
Yes. That was the common perception, which was wrong as usual.
Well, let me run this one by you.
Oh, be my guest.
This morning, in my mail, I received printouts from a variety of now non-existent websites.
What you do in your own time, Carl, is up to you.
I'm not talking about porn sites.
Oh, no? Pity. I could do with some new ones. I've visited all the others.
Well, try these for a change. AttackingAmerica.com, BombingShipping.com, SinkingOilTankers.com, or my personal favorite, USThirstForPetroleum.org. Also sent to me an article from Reuters about a NATO submarine exercise last month whose operational simulation was the tracking of terrorists using commercial shipping as a form of transportation. And from the Associated Press, a small web piece in which a Sudanese local boy called Mohammed El Sari, aged 7, is reported as saying, on seeing the Ocean Spirit berthed at that port of Akik on the coast of the Sudan, that ship will sink.
I only read the Washington Times for the crossword.
What have you got us involved in?
Keeping this country going. What else could it possibly be?
Syria again reiterated its position that it had no involvement or control over the terrorist group, the Ansar. Added to that, the Syrian government has again denied access, as it sees it, for any foreign power to set foot on its soil to apprehend the suspected criminals. With the tension growing almost by the hour, few officials either here or in London are truly optimistic that the use of force can be avoided.
Mr. Ambassador, what do you have for us today?
Mr. Sterling, I have discussed this matter with President Bashar, and he has authorized me to offer you greater access to our oil fields on condition of...
Mr. Ambassador, with respect, I don't need your permission. In a very short time, we shall own all of your oil and gas reserves. So thank you for taking the time, but you are only offering what we shall shortly possess.
But what you ask of us is more...
You know what we want. The men who kept hold of our people in Lebanon during the 80s. I don't know why you people don't hand them over. I would have thought your president would be only too glad to be shot of them.
He cannot be seen to bow down before the United States.
Then find a way, Mr. Ambassador, and do it quickly.
It has just been confirmed by the Pentagon that all their troops are now finally in position and simply await the order from the Commander-in-Chief. The final number of coalition forces now stands at just over 153,000 soldiers, sent from the United States, France, Germany, and the United Kingdom.
Mr. President, you asked me to look at the position of put options with regards to...
Who stood to gain financially from the attack?
Yes, sir.
What do you know, Carl?
Put options were secured on the Jupiter Shipping Company and several others only a matter of days before the loss of the Ocean Spirit.
Who placed the options?
The name Brian T. Jones keeps coming up, Mr. President.
Jones is the Deputy Director of Intelligence over at the agency.
The CIA. Yes, sir.
Jones was recommended to me by David Sterling.
Yes, sir.
But he wouldn't have been stupid enough to put
Perhaps he never thought anyone would bother to check, not with the war coming. After all, nobody asked who was trading with the Nazis for almost 60 years, by which point most that had were dead.
You think David knew?
I'm not sure I want to know, sir.
I'm not sure I want to know either, but I think I should.
Should Syria continue to refuse the handing over of the terrorist suspects and continue to defy the international community,
How did it come to this?
then it can only be a matter of time before these forces begin aggressive movements.
I can't stop this.